This is Geeks Unleashed, episode 44.
Sorry, my bad.
You started to say something. I was like, what? Okay.
Sorry, okay.
Let's have my cup of tea. Hello, welcome to Geeks Unleashed. This is episode 44. I'm Mark.
And I'm Jasmin.
Each week, we cover the news of the week and we pick a couple of things to review that caught our fancy in TV, comics, movies, and games. This week's reviews are Season 2 of A Discovery of Witches on AMC Plus and Godzilla vs. Kong on HBO Max in America, but you can rent it over here on Amazon Prime.
And spoiler warning, this is a review show, so if you have not had a chance to watch Discovery of Witches Season 2 or Godzilla vs. Kong, you might want to pause this and come back later. And then at the very end, we'll give you a couple of recommendations of our own. Wow, that was fun. It took us about 35 minutes to get through the intro this week.
You won't hear that. Do outtakes city. So, do you know what? Actually, before I jump into any news and stuff, I've been kind of, I was chatting to you earlier about going through and getting familiar with the other people out there that do the same thing as us. Mm-hmm. So, been checking out the First Issue Club, listened to a couple of their episodes, and really enjoyed them, and I thought it was pretty cool, basically a podcast where they just review the first issues of different people's comics. The Wednesday pull list as well, which I thought was pretty cool. They got a similar show to us, but obviously just review comics. Mm-hmm. And I'm getting quite into another one as well. There's two others as well that I've shared with you, actually. Fake Geek Girls and Girls Talk Comics as well. Quite enjoyed all of those as well. Oh, another one as well, actually, which I really enjoyed, Paperbacks and Soundtracks. I think this the last 2 weeks I've been really just listening to just other people's podcasts. I quite like the Paperbacks and Soundtracks one because they kind of do it like it's like a radio show.
Yeah.
And the fact that they talk about comics and music as well, I thought was quite a unique take on a podcast.
Yeah, well, you sent me a bunch of links, but my internet was out for most of the week, so I haven't had a chance to catch up on anything because when I got home from work, all I could do was read whatever was on my Kindle. But some of the other podcasts that I do listen to, there's The Blurred Girl. I love her stuff. She does live shows every Tuesday, and the For All Nerds podcast. They keep up with all of the MCU stuff, and their takes on the MCU happenings are just hilarious to me. So those are a couple of the podcasts that I listen to. But I do follow Girls Talk Comics on Twitter, and I get a kick out of them.
They're constantly tweeting all their crazy drawings and stuff.
Yes, I was just gonna say the intentionally bad drawings are some of my favorite things on Twitter. They're hilarious.
Girls Talk Comics seem pretty cool as well. I've spoken to them a couple of times on Twitter as well. So, but no, it's cool to just check out other people's stuff. So, so we will get into the news.
Jumping right into it. So, Netflix and Sony have signed a brand new deal. Basically, Sony kind of broke up with Starz and is moving on to Netflix come 2022. It is a deal. It's what they call a pay one window, which basically just kind of means exclusivity after the property leaves theaters and has been released on home video. So first service to be able to show the Sony movies outside of the theater is going to be Netflix. So they're going to get some pretty big stuff. They're going to get Morbius. They're going to get Uncharted. So, and it's funny because everyone who has Netflix always talks down to the actual films that Netflix has available, in their libraries. So that would be pretty cool that Sony films will appear on Netflix before they appear anywhere else once they leave theaters.
And probably the Spider-Man films as well, I would imagine, which I can't imagine Disney and Marvel are too happy about.
Well, yeah, because they said Into the Spider-Verse would be coming back to Netflix. So, oh man, interesting times.
Yeah, well, I agree with you. About the Netflix movies, so they are fairly shocking, most of them. And, it seems to me when you go onto Netflix, it's just really old rubbish films that no one particularly cares about. I might be wrong, but like there might be a few gems in there. But it seems to me that as everybody's setting up their own platform now, Netflix seems to be losing more and more of the content that kept them going.
Yeah, but I would say of the streamers, Netflix probably puts out some of the best original content. Although Amazon Prime is really starting to step up their game as far as original content goes too.
Oh yeah, no, the TV shows that Netflix puts out, they are much better than what Amazon puts out, and they put out a lot more original content. Disney, I know they're new to the game, but their original content has taken over a year, and I know COVID was the main reason for that. But so hopefully, as time goes on, Disney will step it up. But Disney are only putting out high quality content though, like movie budget content.
Oh yeah, Netflix doesn't appeal to the. I mean, they don't abide by the high quality only. Like they put out some pretty awful things too.
Yeah, they seem to be going with the approach that it doesn't really matter whether it's good quality or not. Just get it out there.
Content.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a fan for everything. So, we reviewed actually. I've forgotten. Oh yeah, Cursed. The first 3 episodes of Cursed. Normally, like I might go back and carry on watching something like that we've started watching, but Cursed was so awful. Like, it's
I wanted better of that one because honestly, I love a good King Arthur tale. I'm not gonna lie. Like I love that story, and I think it's a translatable story, but that version was just not it.
Oh yeah, I love like King Arthur and Merlin type stuff. And I remember talking about that a lot actually when I was like, I went into this like high expectations and came out there with like such low expectations or low feelings is what I came out with. But yeah, no, Netflix with their movies though, their original movies, like we have constant joke that they has a cast of 3. Like, you know, they've only got enough money to pay for 3 actors. Like,
well, I mean, we didn't put it as a separate news item, but they did just sign that $26 million deal to have the next 2 sequels for Knives Out.
Oh yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
So that's gonna be awesome.
Yeah. So I guess Netflix is still relevant. So for now,
they are.
I think Netflix aren't going anywhere. They are big. I think they're just having to restructure themselves, and also you got the middle world stuff come in. Like again, we didn't put it down, but Jupiter's Legacy as well. The trailer came out for this week. Did you watch the trailer?
No, I haven't.
I'm on the fence about it. Like,
I know that was something you and Stephen have been talking about for a while, so I need to catch up and see what that's about.
I've never read any of the comics of it. I don't know. I'll watch it, but like, well, I mean, I'm sure we'll both watch it, but yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. I might be surprised. It might be really good, but the trailer I just felt was okay. Like, you know, it was, but then again, I think if a trailer shows you too much, it can kind of ruin it. So maybe maybe they're holding back. It was a good trailer because I didn't really feel like I knew enough about what was going on. But yeah, so Netflix is still putting out some good stuff, and they've got the middle world stuff, and hopefully we'll see some more coming out. So anyway, Spider-Man news, but we're not talking about Homecoming or anything related. It's Into the Spider-Verse 2. There's a rumor that Christopher Daniel Barnes is in negotiations to reprise his voiced role of Spider-Man from the 1990s animated cartoon. So yeah, he's supposed. Sorry, it could be more of a cameo than maybe like a bigger role.
Yeah, it didn't seem like he would have a big role like Peter B. Parker did in the first Into the Spider-Verse.
Do you know what? When I saw this news earlier in the week, I was like, "Oh, this is so cool!" Like, and if they do that though, it'd be brilliant if they brought in like other Spider-Man voices as well.
I think they're gonna have to, right? But they also said that it's going to be in the same animation style as the '90s cartoon, so that'll be. I think that was one of the best features of Into the Spider-Verse was the different animation that they kind of all brought into one film. That was just a spectacular film, in my opinion.
Oh, that was one of the best animated movies sort of ever.
Yeah. It was definitely, it came out the same year as Black Panther, I think. So 2016. And it's hard for me to pick which of those two movies was my favorite movie of the year, but sometimes I have to give the edge to Into the Spider-Verse. It was so good.
I don't know if you've ever seen. I've in the I think it was the 80s or something. The original Teenage Mutant. We got in the UK. We called it Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles. And do you remember there's the Ninja Turtles, the animated series, which had Krang in it and all that.
Yeah,
do you remember that?
I loved that series.
So you know how they had a more current one, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah, with Stephen Amell.
Yeah. So did you know that there was a crossover episode with that where they had the same animation style, so they crossed it over with the original one from the 80s.
Oh my goodness.
And they kept the animation style from the 80s. So it was that was a pretty cool episode. So I thought, well, I remember watching that. I can't remember now, like 2016 or something. That was quite a while ago. But yeah, it was quite cool that they had the animation of both the series. They didn't update them. So
I like that. That's cool. All right, moving right along. We're getting back into the DC drama. This is just a never-ending saga, and it is fascinating to keep up with. So after all of the fallout with Ray Fisher coming forward and his accusations against Joss Whedon, this, that, and the other, we finally have one of the screenwriters, Chris Terrio. He was a screenwriter on Batman vs. Superman. He was also a screenwriter for Justice League. He he came out and he did an interview with the Hollywood Reporter where he basically trashed the theatrical version of Justice League. He said he watched it a few weeks before it was released in the theaters, and he actually started to put in motion how he could take his name off of this film. He did not want to be credited as a screenwriter because he was so against the version that actually was going to be into theaters. But he said that unfortunately everything was too far along, and he didn't want to slow down the release date by making them recut a lot of the things that they had already printed and, marketing materials and that kind of thing. But some of the things that he brings to light are some of the things that Ray Fisher has been saying for almost a year now, where he actually said in his interview, his quote is, "Zack Snyder and I always considered Cyborg's story to be the heart of the movie. He has the most pronounced character of any of the heroes. He is whole and he is loved." And he said that him and Zack wanted to make sure that because the film had a white writer and a white director, that they both had the perspective of an actor of color, which was very important to them. And that's why Ray Fisher had such a huge, Ray Fisher's input was such a huge impact and part of what they built into Victor Stone / Cyborg story. And I thought that was really interesting because that's the first time that anybody from behind the scenes has admitted kind of what Ray Fisher's been saying the whole time. Not that I'm saying I didn't believe Ray Fisher when he came out and said what he said, I believed him, but it's just the never ending saga. So every week there's a new piece of this DC puzzle that comes forward. But I thought that Chris Terrio's comments were pretty damning when he said he watched the theatrical cut, hated it so much, he tried to get them to take his name off the film, but it was too far along.
I mean, that's pretty damaging in itself. Take my name off this stuff.
Yeah. And he also said that, he understood that people would have issues with the Snyder version that was released. He said, but I'm happy to debate with people on my actual merits. If they didn't like the story that we were trying to tell, if they didn't like the pacing or whatever, he said, that's fine. He said, but I didn't want to debate people about something that was so not what I had envisioned and not what I had put to paper. When he was talking about the theatrical version. So I thought it's wild for a screenwriter to finally come out and say that they were so pissed off with the final product that they wanted to take their name off of it.
Didn't something similar happen with Fantastic Four, the 2015 version? Was it Josh Trank the director tried to get his name taken off that as well?
That sounds familiar, maybe.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was something like that. Yeah, but it's not. It's a shame that he's come out with this so late, but it's good to see that there is more support of Ray Fisher.
But it's also good to see that what the fans had been saying from the beginning, because I remember when I walked out of the theater when I saw Justice League, my first thoughts were, I really, really, really wanted more of Cyborg's story. It was crazy to me how I came out of that film, and especially being a huge Batman fan, I came out of that film and Cyborg was my favorite character from the film. So it just goes to show that there was so much more going on with that character, and it just kind of got butchered for the theatrical version, which is really unfortunate.
You know, the Snyder Cut, it was so good. Like, I enjoyed it. I'm glad we dedicated a whole episode to it last week. And Cyborg and the Flash, standout characters from the movie. To be honest, though, they all were good.
Yeah.
But they were all, other than the Flash and other than Cyborg, they all seem to have a lot of screen time in their previous movies and in the original Whedon version. So the fact that these two characters haven't yet managed to have their own movie, and this was their only movie, and they got such minor roles. So I enjoyed the Snyder Cut for the fact that it actually gave a much more team dynamic and a much fairer approach. I would almost say that Superman had the least amount of screen time in the Snyder Cut. So,
which is fair because Superman has had there's been so many iterations of Superman.
Yeah, and also he had Man of Steel and
Batman versus Superman.
And really he came out of that 4-hour movie. I think he comes in the last hour, which is fine by me. I was cool with that. So, and also when you get like Superman rock up, I mean, if he'd have been there in the beginning, Steppenwolf wouldn't have really been a threat. So, I think it's good to see more support of Ray Fisher. I hope that somehow things can get turned around. I said it last week. I'd love to see the Snyderverse get restored. Other than the apocalyptic storyline, which I think if you bring him back, I think that's where he wants to head it. So maybe.
I just want them to. I don't know. I guess the executives or whoever's in charge over there at Warner Brothers, pull your head out of your own ass, apologize, and give us a Cyborg film. That's what we want.
And a Deathstroke movie. I want to, I would love Deathstroke versus Batman. Like pure
that would
Deathstroke.
Be fun.
That would be such good. Get Ben Affleck back. Do something.
Yeah.
Like, let him fucking write the movie.
Yeah.
Like, just, if that's what it takes, just get him in or get him to write the movie with somebody. Like, if they're a bit concerned about does he know his comic background, maybe get him to write it with I don't know, get James Tynion on it from the current Batman comic and maybe do a joint feature together or something like that. But just put Deathstroke versus Batman would be amazing. Like, that would be cool. Or even something around that. Like, I would love that. So that's me. But I don't know. I don't know what Warner Brothers are doing. So
neither do they.
I was just about to say, I don't think they actually know what they're doing.
They don't have a clue.
I think they wake up a different day and go, shit, let's do this.
Yeah.
And then next week they go, actually, do you know what? Let's actually change what we were just saying last week.
Fuck it, let's do this instead.
Yeah. They seem to be applying that to everything that they own. So anyway, Paramount have delayed 10 movies. So Snake Eyes, previously scheduled for October 22nd, 2021, has now been moved to, it's actually
that one moved up.
Forward.
It's the only one.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is a bit of a surprise. July 23rd, weirdly. Everything else, however, Jackass, previously scheduled for September 3rd, has moved to October 22nd. Top Gun Maverick has moved from July 2nd to November 19th.
Which is weird. That is, to me, like a perfect 4th of July movie. I can't understand why they pushed that back.
November seems like a bit of a dead month to drop a movie in.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I guess COVID and, vaccine rollout and all that stuff, but that just seems like a missed opportunity to not release Top Gun around 4th of July.
Yeah. And then the forever delayed Mission Impossible 7.
That movie's been delayed, 2 years now at this point?
Oh, yeah. And then, we only got to Mission Impossible 8 yet. So, Mission Impossible 7, previously scheduled for November 19th, that last shout, has now been pushed to May 27th, 2022. So, it's crazy now.
Yeah.
There's an untitled Bee Gees movie that's been announced for November 4th. 2022. So, I mean, they're not even bothering with this year.
Yeah.
Dungeons and Dragons, which was previously scheduled for May 27th, 2022, has now been moved to
almost
March
a whole
3rd,
year.
2023. Yeah, I know. Did you used to watch the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon, by the way?
No.
Oh, so good. I'm not a Dungeons and Dragons board gamer.
Yeah, I've never played it.
No, no, I've never played it, but like, I think the cartoon was based off it. But I used to watch it as a kid. It was brilliant. Anyway, the Untitled Star Trek movie, which I think they've been talking about since 1997.
Yeah, well, I just saw something else about that. I want to say yesterday. So that's pretty new.
That's been announced now for the 9th of June 2023.
So
Who
can even get excited about 2023 at this point? That's just so far out.
I would love to see more Star Trek. I really want Chris Pine back. You know, I want to. There was talk of Chris Hemsworth, and you know, I just think they apparently they're not willing to take the money that they're willing to offer. So
Chris Pine is so good as Kirk. To me, he's better than Shatner, mainly because he's less campy, but he's still damn charming.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Shatner was for that time. So, but then everything was campy about then. You know, you had Buck Rogers. And, like, I remember some of those TV shows from back then. The Time Tunnel, the Land of the Giants, all that. You know, it was all crazy stuff. Do you remember the Land of the Giants and the Time
Never
Tunnel?
heard of it.
Oh, they were like 60s and 70s TV shows, like American ones. Like, you know, they were all.
I didn't watch TV that old.
No, it was over here. It got shown over here, obviously on repeat, and my mum used to watch it. So,
I don't even remember stuff like from the 80s. I only some of the earliest TV shows I remember are, I don't know, like dramas, like In the Heat of the Night and that kind of stuff.
I don't know that. Anyway, Mission Impossible 8, previously scheduled for November 4th, 2022. Again, another 2023 movie will be dropping on the 7th of July. And just announced The Shrinking of Treehorn, November 10th, 2023. And there's an untitled Ryan Reynolds, John Krasinski movie has been announced for November 17th, 2023. All of those 2023 movies and 22 movies, I don't really care. I mean, I guess they have to announce the scheduling, but who cares at this point?
Yeah, that's just too far out.
I'm at the point where it's like, I just want everything to be reopened now.
Yeah. I'm at the point now where it's like, I got my second vaccine shot this week. So there's a Demon Slayer movie, the Mugen Train, is coming to theaters April 23rd. So like, I'm trying to figure out, can I go see that movie in theaters?
Well, yeah,
like, am I going to be okay?
But that's the whole thing. If you've been vaccinated, you should be able to go out. So if you're still not going out and you've been vaccinated, then what was the point? So, and as more, I mean, don't get me wrong, there is probably a chance of COVID, but now if you get COVID, the vaccine should be sufficient. That's what it says on the tin, should get you through.
Right. To keep you from being seriously affected.
Yeah. It should be like, I don't know, it might be that you'd spend a week in bed sick potentially.
Yeah.
I'm no scientist or doctor, please don't take my advice. But, you know, the way I see it is if you've had vaccine, especially if you've had your second vaccine, and then you go out and you get COVID, this is how it should be with all vaccines, you know, like the flu jab and all the rest of it. Like, if you get it, you shouldn't be as ill if you had no vaccine. So,
right. Well, I would, even if I go to the theater, I would still wear my mask. But I definitely want to see Demon Slayer in theaters. So
the moment they get rid of masks, I'm done with those things. So I went to get takeaway today, and I'm trying to talk through a mask, and she's like, "What?" And I say again, "What?" In the end, I had to put my mask forward a little bit so I could actually say it. It's like, it's so difficult to actually have some sort of conversation with someone. Well, she's wearing a mask, I'm wearing a mask, and there's a screen between us. So I was like, how to apply it? Just give me a bit of paper and a pen, and I'll write it down.
Let me just pass you my order through the window.
Well, yeah, I'd say, yeah, I haven't had the offer of the jabs yet because they haven't made their way down to my age group over here yet. So,
they opened it up pretty much to everyone. I think next week is the deadline for them to open it up to the entire country. Well, anybody over 18. So, yeah, I stood in line. Like when I got my first shot, I was in and out, and I had to sit for 15 minutes afterward to make sure that you don't have any side effects. So the whole thing took about 40 minutes.
Third arm growing out.
Yeah, exactly. But the second time I went, oh my God, I was in line to get into the building for an hour and 40 minutes. I read 7 chapters of an ebook standing in line. Like it was
What
crazy.
book was that?
It's this cheesy romance novel that I've been reading. Don't judge me. I've read like, I don't know. Somebody gave me an Amazon gift card, so I've been buying up all of these like digital like Kindle books. They're like 99 cents or $1.99. So it's
all these digital shit books.
Yeah, but they're like novella size, so they're not full novel length. And so, I mean, you can read them in like a day and a half. So I've probably read 8 novellas in the past 2 weeks.
They do deal of the day on Kindle. Like, have you looked at those?
Mm-mm. I actually have been reading so much that I thought about getting Kindle Unlimited, but I already have Comixology Unlimited. And I was like, no, I don't think I need Kindle Unlimited.
Anyway, we've promoted Amazon enough. So we don't get paid.
No, we sure don't. We'd love to, though. Amazon, if you're interested in sponsoring our podcast, we would happily have a talk with you.
Anyway, A Discovery of Witches.
Dun, dun, dun.
You've stayed too long. Adopted a child and stolen a book from the Habsburg Emperor.
I was here before, Stephen. I'm aware of that, Matthew.
Yes. We screwed up.
You broke the rules of time walking. To observe, not participate.
Okay, based on the All Souls trilogy by Deborah Harkness, it is a 10-episode series which has been released over here on Sky and in America on AMC Plus. It stars a whole lot of people. It's written as well by a variety of people too. Kate Brooke, Tom Farley, Charlene James, and Sarah Dollard. It's directed by a whole bunch of people. Sarah Walker, Alice Troughton, I think, and
Juan Carlos Medina.
Yeah, there you go. Like stepping in there. But it stars a whole lot of people that you should hopefully remember from the first season, as well as an extreme amount of new cast.
Yeah, pretty much every single person from the first season is back.
Oh yeah, but plus a whole bunch.
Plus
of other
a whole
people.
second season's worth of people. Yeah, it's
So,
a lot.
Yeah, it went from one thing to another. Anyway, Teresa Palmer's back, Matthew Good's back, Edward Blumel, Aisha Hart, Owen Teal, Alex Kingston. Who doesn't know Alex Kingston? Valerie Pettiford, Trevor Eve, Lindsay Duncan, James Purefoy, who is probably my standout for this whole season, Stephen Cree, Tom Hughes, Michael Lindford, Elaine Cassidy, Sheila Hancock, Paul Reese, Holly Aird, Adele Leonce, and there's probably so many other people too. So this season, before getting into it, what I did was, because it's been quite a while, 2018 was when season 1 came out, which was only 8 episodes, and I remember picking it up a little bit later after it came out, and I put it on and I was like, actually this is pretty cool. And I normally kind of dismiss English type things or don't really give them as much opportunity as I should, and I have to put my hands up for that. Anyway, I watched the first 8 episodes within like a day, and I was like, "Wow, this is bloody amazing!" Well, I loved it. So I was just like, "Yeah, I thought it was so good." Like you enjoyed the first season as well, didn't you?
I loved the first season.
So just a bit of recap: Diana Bishop, the main character, played by Teresa Palmer, is the female lead, and then we've got Matthew Good, who plays Matthew Claremont, and how good that he had the same name as his character. And he plays the hundreds and hundreds of year old vampire, where Diana Bishop is a witch, but kind of season 1 is basically she's a clumsy witch. She doesn't want to know being a witch. She just wants to be human. She's a professor. And then she's
also bound, so she can't use her powers in the first season.
Well, yeah, but she didn't know that originally either.
Yeah.
She just initially just didn't want to be like interested in the powers or being a witch. She just wanted to live a normal human life. However, that option gets taken away from her quite early on in season 1. In the first episode, she goes to a library and somehow or other comes across this book that people have been looking for for a long time, and when she opens it up, things go crazy. Like, it kind of almost a bit like that whole Man of Steel ripple wave that comes out of his mouth and wakes up those mother boxes. It was very similar to that, although you saw no wave. But like as she's looking through the book, season 1, suddenly all these big different creatures start to become aware of it, whether they're witches or whether they're vampires or whatever. And they know that it's sort of originated from this library, and people very quickly latch onto the fact that it was Diana that picked up this book. Initially, Matthew's interest is relating to this book because there's a much bigger thing at play here, because witches are losing their powers.
Vampires are dying out.
Yeah, vampires are dying out. We don't really know what's going on. There's this whole mystery with this book. There's a much bigger thing to this book. And by the end of season 2, we still don't really have the overall answer to the book. But so Matthew becomes interested in Diana. Throughout season 1, they go from meeting, having a bit of flirtation, to suddenly completely falling in love, and and Diana's introduced to Matthew's vampire mother and vampire family, and that kind of thing, at their sort of family home. And Diana's becoming sort of hunted by her own kind, and they're forced to basically go back in time. So Peter Knox is kind of the main guy that's after her in the present, and they undo the bounding which happened, and that happened when she was a child, to protect her from Peter Knox actually discovering sort of how powerful she is.
Right.
So they end it with this whole thing that it's season 1 that she's this like time walker and can jump back in time. And they jump back in time to Victorian England and Elizabethan England actually. When they jump back in time, you don't really get any teasers, which I know some shows do that. They kind of might jump in time sort of halfway through the last episode and maybe give you 20 minutes of what's going on, but they kind of they jump and you don't know what's happened.
Yeah, they jump and then season 1 ends on that massive cliffhanger of whether or not they both made it.
Yeah, because it was a bit confusing as to whether they both were going to go or not. So then season 2 starts up with them arriving, and this is where, like, me and Jasmin were just speaking about this before we recorded. I just want to get out there. I love season 1. I really did enjoy it. I loved everything about season 1, but it was very big. It was almost the polar opposite of season 1. So season 1 was 8 episodes, and although this is only 2 episodes more, we got to spend a lot more time with the characters in season 1 and a much smaller cast, and it gave us a chance to get to know the setting, get to know the characters. And I don't really want to criticize the show because I do still really loved it, and I'm really excited for season 3. So I'm torn as to maybe how they could have done it a little bit more, because I personally feel they could have taken a different approach to it, either to have released it maybe in 2 halves, and when I say that, maybe one half in the past and then the other half in the present.
Right. Do like Walking Dead. If you do Walking Dead does half seasons all the time.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, they do.
So,
yeah. And Fear the Walking Dead does it as well.
Yeah.
Or my other thought was to split the show alternate episodes, and we did get episodes and moments in the present, but they were fewer and far between. We kind of had more episodes in the past. We sort of had 2 episodes that was just purely in like the 16th century, and then we had like an episode in the present, and then it was like so when season 2 starts and I had 2 episodes just in the past, I was like, oh, okay, so season 1's characters are just gone, are they? Like I actually assumed that season 2 was just purely in the past. And then when they started to get into season 2, they started to show more and more. It was more in the latter half, I felt, that we got more of the present. So I loved all of the characters from the first season, so I was quite disappointed that the earlier part didn't include them. But I did love seeing Diana and Matthew going into the past. So when they arrive, they arrive not exactly where they wanted to land, but they end up having to take over Matthew's old life. And it seems that they're time traveling rather than doing the cliche and the cheesy thing of him running into his past self. What happens is when you time travel, you displace yourself. So I assume that he goes off somewhere and then blips back again and then has no memory of that kind of event.
Well, the way they explained it was that his other self was off on a mission somewhere.
Yeah, but then they sort of did say that he might be displaced or something like that. So, but yeah, they did say that he was off on a mission, but they said he could be displaced or something.
Mm-hmm.
They were sort of quite vague about it. I think if he had been on a mission, somebody somehow would have found a way to have contacted him and said, "Look, there's some guy here claiming to be you." Like,
Mm-hmm.
I would assume that he's displaced or something. Yeah,
Actually, what I assumed was, so this is jumping ahead a little bit, but in the present day, they have a vampire that starts attacking people in London. And they say that the vampire that's attacking people in London has what they call a blood rage. And as soon as they said that, I was like, past Matthew ended up going into the future when future Matthew went into the past. And because he's displaced and confused and doesn't know what the hell's going on, he has like turned on himself pretty much. And my guess was that past Matthew is the one running around terrorizing London at the moment. However, that storyline is not resolved by the end of the second season.
Do you know what, actually, that was a good, do you know what, because that's something that ran throughout the present. I was going to talk about the present in a minute, but like, yeah, that's sort of jumping ahead a little bit. The present storylines had a lot of interesting moments in them, and I really enjoyed the present storylines. And that murder mystery thing of this crazy vampire running around and killing humans, and he's got this, and we find out throughout season 2.
You find out, I think in the 7th episode, it's like way later in the season, you find out that blood rage only comes from Matthew's mom's bloodline, period.
Yeah. And they knew this a long time ago and wiped out most of that line.
Right.
But they set up this Grandmaster of the Knights of Lazarus. They set up this Knights of Lazarus cult type thing to protect the family. So yeah, I was actually thinking we were going to find out who the murderer was,
right?
And they don't tell us. They don't tell us.
No, they leave that hanging.
So you think there is a moment where you're going to find out. So
right, because he fight whoever that person is. I'm assuming it's a he. It might not be a he, but they fight with Domenico. And like when he started fighting with Domenico, I thought for sure Domenico would be the one to be like, "Oh my god, I knew it." But nope.
Yeah, I honestly thought that you'd finally find out, and I did think to myself, it's going to be like one of these jaw drop moments. But maybe that it's got to be somebody for us to be surprised about now,
right?
Because they've kind of set it up. If it's just some unknown character, I probably wouldn't really care.
Yeah, that's my theory, and I'm going to stick with it until someone proves me wrong. So. Yeah. By the 3rd episode, that's what I started to think. I was like, oh, blood rage. Now I bet you like past Matthew got displaced and it's past Matthew that is now in the future.
But then that means then that he would still be in the future. So they'd have to find a way of sending him back.
Not necessarily, because maybe he would go back when they come back.
But then will we ever then find out who the murderer was? Oh, it's annoying. We'll have to wait. So, I'm assuming there's a plan for us to figure this out or get told.
Fingers crossed.
So jumping back to Dinah and Matthew, the reason they jumped back was for 2 things. One, to try and find the book, this
the Book of Life.
Yeah, the Book of Life, but they called it like something else, like Astronaut 146 or whatever they called it. They jumped back because they wanted to find a copy of the book in the past, and that is one of the main things that drives the season 2 storyline for them in the past, and where they end up going. They end up leaving England and going here, there, and everywhere across Europe and meeting different people because they're looking for the book, and they do get the book eventually. However, when they get the book, it's a sort of a big moment, and somebody has the book in their possession, and some of the pages get ripped out, and you see these pages later on in the future behind some glass cabinets, and somebody else has one of the pages as well. Anyway, but the other reason they jumped back into the past was because Diana was starting to get hunted in season 1. They thought if we go back in time, we could maybe find a witch who can train her. Mm-hmm. So she starts getting trained. And if you look at the opposite of, she becomes very much the opposite to season 1 Diana. So season 1 Diana was, like a noob. She was clumsy. She was, and almost very reliant on Matthew. And by the end of season 2, she's very much a
defiant and strong-willed.
Yeah. And the fact that she goes and does a deal behind Matthew's back,
Right.
and you know, like,
And she even specifically says, like, I have to only give you one drop because I have to make sure that Matthew can't smell my blood on you and this, that, and the other.
oh yeah, like, and just how she just the fact that he gives her a knife and she just says no, and then just waves her hand over her wrist, and just a tiny little vein opens, and she's come a long way in those 10 episodes from and become a very much more confident witch. So I enjoyed all of the stuff throughout season 2 in the past, and when we were seeing it in Elizabethan England, you know how the road, I don't know if you thought about this, Jasmin, like, but you know how the roads are really narrow and the houses are very close together. So that was a thing that we had back then. And that's how, I don't know if you've heard of the Great Fire of London.
Yes.
And that's how that
same thing happened in Chicago here.
Yeah, so because all the houses were too close together, so the fire just
and
spread.
they were all made of wood.
Yeah. So when they rebuilt London, obviously they didn't put them as close together. So but yeah, so when I saw that was like one of the first things that jumped out at me. I was like, wow, the roads are just tiny. You wouldn't even be able to get a car down there. Imagine if that never happened. Like, they would have to knock down London. So yeah, no, I loved all of that stuff. And one of the things I loved was that Matthew gets summoned to go and see his father, who is played by James Purefoy, and his father is initially just this nasty piece of work, but you actually see him come round, and almost he has a bit of character development himself.
Yeah,
because he comes round to Matthew, and because Matthew, I'm assuming, was a very different person, and that's kind of what's implied. I imagine that he was probably a bit of a shit back then, and he's come back with this much more modern attitude. And they have this whole thing throughout Discovery of Witches that they don't like the different creatures to bond with each other or form relationships with each other, and you're not allowed cross-species relationships. It's completely forbidden. So that's why Diana finds it very difficult to settle into this time period, because a lot of Matthew's
only the humans
family
are okay with her. Any other creatures that she comes across are kind of skeptical, and they all assume that she has done something and like bewitched Matthew in some kind of way.
Yeah. So I loved seeing her initially arrive, and it's, you know, he's obviously got a bit of wealth about him back then and some stature, and he's got familiarity with the Queen of England, and you know, he's a wealthy guy, Matthew, in the past, and she suddenly becomes dressed as like a lady, and she has to learn how to speak differently, and you know, and you know, even her accent makes her stand out. So I did love that whole her having to adjust to this new period. He had to adjust to it a little bit because he, like he said, you know, I was here 400 years ago. That, you know, who remembers 400 years ago? I can barely remember last week. So like, he's got to adjust a little bit, but he adjusts a lot quicker because it's just him having to familiarize himself. But she has to adjust, you know, very quickly to this new surrounding and essentially this new world. And back then, it's a lot more of a dangerous world, as it proves to be for them a couple of times, especially when she gets sort of kidnapped, sort of taken away
by his psycho sister.
Yeah, and sort of psycho best mate who fancies him or whatever. So, but one of the real key things I loved was in the last episode when they're kind of getting ready to go home back to their present, and actually they built quite a nice life for themselves in the past. They admitted themselves they stayed too long. They've become familiar with people. They've kind of adopted a little boy. They've become all these, you know, familiarities with the past and stuff like that.
Which my question, which is not related to anything, but like the kid's name is Jack. Like, because they leave, does he then become Jack the Ripper, or is 1590 too early for Jack the Ripper? I think 1590 is too early for Jack the Ripper, but still.
No, it's too early. 1888.
Okay, never mind then.
Anyway, throw me off now. Yeah, but anyway, so in the last episode, one of the things I thought was pretty cool, it kind of starts with one of the witches that's been training her, says to her that another time walker has arrived, and they're walking down one of the streets, and they say, "I can smell coffee." And then Diana and Matthew spin this guy around, and it's Diana's father.
That was a good.
And I was like, I was like, that's a pretty cool twist. Like,
Yeah.
the time traveler that arrived is her dead father, but from much earlier in his life before he died.
But it was really
And
interesting the way that they kind of deducted that or deduced that, because Matthew was like, I smell coffee. And Diana was like, there's no way you smell coffee. Coffee is not introduced to this region for another 200 years. And he's like, no, I for sure smell coffee.
yeah, so he obviously smell of coffee. And but I thought that was a really cool moment. And a lot of this whole thing, the whole jump around time and running into people you know, and especially of this era, it made me think a lot of Outlander, which I love, just, you know, the classic setting and stuff like that. So I enjoyed that. So anyway, to flip this over, the present had a lot of storylines going on, not as many. However, it's kind of starting to set up Matthew and Diana's return, where there's obviously more political friction between the main characters, you know,
right, because the congregation is still like hot on their heels trying to figure out what the hell's going on with those two.
Yeah, they're all on all sides trying to look through history to find signs of Diana and Matthew, and there's some cool moments as well. Again, like Jane Purfoy's character, he learns, unfortunately, that he does die, but he doesn't learn when, and so he writes a love letter to his wife and he hides it in a book. And in the same episode where we sort of say goodbye to his character, you see the wife in the future reading the letter, and I thought that was pretty cool. So,
yeah, because Sarah and Emily felt something that was not in the chateau before. So it's I thought that was really cool how in the present the past is sort of reshaping the present, because Emily and Sarah felt the presence that something has changed. So they tear apart the library, and finally Isabeau finds the letter hidden in a book that Philippe left her, where he talks about, yeah, it's a love letter, but he also talks about Matthew and Diana. And there's also those portraits that they gave to Jack, which wind up in an auction house in present day London. So it's interesting how some of the things that they have done in the past have made their way into the present. I thought that was a really, really cool thread that they played with throughout the season 2.
Mm-hmm. So Marcus actually takes on a much bigger role this season, and you know, he's keeps being referred to as the Grand Master of the Knights of Lazarus, and he gets a little bit in the political environment. But the part that I found more interesting was him actually forming a love interest and with a human, and him deciding for himself that, although that's something again that's banned, that if he's the Grand Master of the Knights of Lazarus, he can make his own rules. So he decides that he's gonna go fall in love with a human, and he brings his human girlfriend home to
to France.
To France, but he Lindsay Duncan character,
Isabeau.
Isabel de Clement's house, and she's got pretty much everybody now at her house. Emily, Sarah.
Yeah, she's got witches, demons,
Marcus,
vampires, and humans.
Like, you know, and actually, Marcus's girlfriend makes a comment about how modern they all are when she's sitting around the table. You know, like you just said, humans, vampires, demons, etc. And they're doing it for themselves. And I do love that Isabel de Clement is at
adaptable.
The very beginning of season 1. She wasn't. If you look at the early stage of season 1,
which is amazing for someone that's 1,000 years old, like she is. Like, she has realized that change happens more rapidly than you think it does. And her character development going from this, because even she was almost like she hadn't even forgiven Matthew for, you know, some of the stuff that he had done in his past. She had held on to grudges that were centuries old, and she's finally starting to realize that, you know, maybe it's not as bad as everyone said it was. And you're right, Marcus's love interest, God, I can't remember her name. Her real name is Adele, but in Phoebe Taylor. So she makes a comment, and she's kind of like, the way forward is together. It really seems like these accords or whatever were meant to keep everybody separate. But when you keep everybody separate, all it does is make everybody paranoid. So I thought that was it's a good message for the current times, really. The way forward is together.
Yeah, to be honest, I liked just seeing the future elements, like the the mixing of all the different species coming together. I enjoyed the murder mystery plot that we had going on. I enjoyed seeing Marcus's growth as a character.
Marcus annoyed the crap out of me though, because he's still incredibly naive. He never, ever, ever should have opened his mouth to Baldwin about anything. Nothing. I don't know what made him think that he could go and tell Baldwin about that baby. That was so stupid. That was just incredibly stupid.
Yeah, I guess he's not fully there in his development journey, but he did. I did feel there was a element of strength coming in, and considering his age as a vampire, he does come across almost like the teenage young boy.
Yeah,
and he did come across stronger, and there was growth. And I did like. I liked more of his confidence, and it was nice.
Yeah.
I think not being under Matthew's shadow. However,
I think he's coming into his own,
2?
but he definitely needs to come into his own under someone else, because that just made no sense. Like if he would talk to the girl that's part of the lab with him and Matthew.
Oh yeah.
I can't remember her name.
This is the trouble. There's so many people. Like difficult trying to remember everyone's names.
If he would just keep someone else there that is a little less trusting than he is, then it wouldn't be so bad. But like him running around and going to Venice by himself and then giving Baldwin all that information, then of course Baldwin is so opportunistic that he goes right to Chabert and is just like, look, here's the deal, this is the information. Then of course Chabert is already working with Peter Knox, and so it's kind of like you just handed the bad guys all of this information on a freaking silver platter. Way to go.
Although whenever you watch TV shows, there's always someone who does something stupid, and like you say, you're just like, why did you do that? Like, but in real life, people wouldn't have done that. Well, actually, sometimes people do stupid stuff.
Actually, I mean, I think he would have, because he probably feels like Baldwin should be loyal to the de Clermonts because he is a de Clermont. But it turns out Baldwin is just as opportunistic as Domenico. So Baldwin and Domenico, to me, are like almost the same character, because they're going to play whatever card they need to play to get their way. And if that means hurting the people that are closest to them, they don't really care. So I really hope that if there's a season 3, Domenico kind of steps up and exerts like some form of, I told you that I was going to make you suffer. Like, I want to really see him step into the bad guy role.
So coming to an end of season 2, Diana and Matthew jump back to the future.
Well, they're supposed to.
Well, yeah, but we don't see them arrive, which is a bit how season 1 ends. We end up with this whole sort of big moment in the future where Peter Knox ends up killing Emily, and which is quite sad. So disappointed by that. We also, Marcus is left, I'm assuming, unconscious, laying on the floor. We've also got that Diana, at some point during season 2, discovers she's pregnant, so we've got that outstanding.
I hate that.
We've got a few balls up in the air, shall we say, and I'm assuming that season 3 is a final season because it's meant to be based off 3 books, so there's a lot to cover in season 3. So I imagine that season 3 is probably going to be as packed as season 2. So,
I liked season 2. I did not like season 2 as much as I liked season 1. I did not enjoy the past as much as Mark did. I really like the present day better. So it kind of annoyed me that they spent so much time in the 1500s, because I really I'm not a big fan of period pieces. Well, I should say I'm not a fan of period pieces that are based on actual reality. Like, you could consider Lord of the Rings a period piece, and I love Lord of the Rings, but anyway. So I prefer the present day, and I love the setting. Like, I love the scenes that they film in Venice and on the canals and that kind of thing. It's just, the scenery in this series is gorgeous.
I spent
really,
a lot of
really
money
gorgeous.
on the scenery, definitely.
Yeah.
Like I keep saying about walking in the streets, it did feel like a proper, sort of Elizabethan, Victorian style road.
And they actually put a lot more into the CGI this season, because all of the scenes with Diana learning how to weave the threads, that was really cool. The scene with the threads, and the scene where she finally gets her familiar and she sees a tree of life and that kind of thing. So you can tell that they put more money into the second season. It was over full. in the sense that there was just too much information to kind of take on. But again, the second season is really good. I just did not enjoy it as much as I enjoyed the first season.
Yeah, no, I did enjoy this season. I think, like I say, money wise was well spent. The scenery and the sets were really well done. It didn't feel cheap. Strangely enough, when I've been watching Grey's Anatomy this year, which is obviously a big budget, I know in America, a big budget ABC show, and it just feels really cheap at the moment. and I think a lot of it's to do with COVID. Like, I think because they've been separating. I've seen them do this on another show as well. I don't watch it, but what's it called? NCIS Los Angeles, and they've separated all the main cast out into different. So that none of the main four casts in NCIS Los Angeles are with each other because of COVID. So they all doing different things. They meet up with other characters, but I'm assuming the reason they do that is because if one of them gets COVID, then you say you got still three of them there. And Grey's Anatomy seems to be doing something similar where they're not having a lot of them together, and a lot of the set, and they've had to create like new sets. So like, one of the characters is like kind of permanently at home, and the home set just looks cheap as anything. And I'm like, they kind of just knock this stuff up overnight. Where a Discovery of Witches, the set design, like you said,
set
the
design is phenomenal.
They put a lot of money into this. Even in I think it was episode 9 or 10 where Diana gets tricked to go on that boat, by the crazy the crazy sister and all that. That whole place, it's really well done by the dock side and everything like that. It doesn't look like someone standing against a green screen. It looks like they spent some money building a dock and some houses by a dock. I mean, I could be completely wrong. It might be a green screen. I might not realized it, but they've done it really well.
But the technology upgrade from the first season to the second season is very apparent.
Yeah. So we're bringing to a close there. But what's any favorite scenes on your side, or any moments that jump out at you, or characters that you enjoyed?
Favorite characters. I don't know. I really kind of like Emily and Sarah. They were some of my favorites, and Domenico. Like I said, I love an opportunistic bad guy. So I really kind of want to see Domenico step up and sort of stick it to both Peter Knox and Chabert, and just show them that the congregation isn't as high and mighty as they think they are.
I loved. I thought it was a good twist bringing in Philip de Clermont, played by James Purfoy. I thought when I heard, like my father summoned me, I was like, oh, that's cool. So because we know in the present he's dead, so I was like, okay, that's cool. So I didn't expect that. I didn't expect that we were going to get that thing. And then James Purfoy is like the best TV villain going. I mean, he was brilliant in Altered Carbon, and I loved him in The Following, although they kind of played his villainous to death in The Following. But did you ever watch The Following?
No.
Oh, this is the trouble when they get a good villain. They need to sometimes realize you need to get a good villain go, and they had him around for almost 3 seasons, which was way too long. So I was happy with 2 seasons, but once they started bringing him into 3rd season, but anyway, he is a brilliant actor. So for me, the whole scenery between him and Matthew was just brilliant. I loved all of that. So, and for me as well, I just love seeing Diana's growth throughout this season.
Yeah, I like that she finally was less whiny and more like in control of what she was doing and in control of the things around her. She didn't let people push her around. She kind of stood up, and she stood up to a lot of people in this season. So it was
including
really
Matthew.
Exactly.
Matthew, yeah. And also, like, because you find out about this blood rage thing, and which is something they introduced in this season rather than the first season. And he's got basically the blood rage is like an animal craziness that they go through. And Matthew, there's a couple of times where Matthew is about to go berserk, and each time she just calms him down. Like, she's very confident. Well, the first time a little bit unsure, but the second time, like, very confident about it. Yeah. And I thought,
there was one scene where he was talking about that, and he got mad and he tried to leave the room, and she set the room on fire, and she was like, "We're still talking," and I was like, "Yeah, girl, you tell her, like, look here, I'm not done talking to you yet."
I like that. I did like that when he goes to storm out, and she sets the doorway and everything alight on fire, and she like he just said, and then she's like, "We're still talking."
Yeah,
and
I thought that was
like,
badass.
I was like, that's very, like, that was not Diana. Diana in season 1 was confident still. but this was like more badass confidence. You know,
Yeah.
it was she still was a bit of a madam in season 1, but there was a lot more confidence here, and
Yeah.
a confidence more with her magic as well. So
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll sort of bring this to a close. I'm still looking forward to season 3 whenever that comes out. I'm assuming it'll probably be about 2 years away, knowing everything that's going on. But we rated it 3.5 out of 5. So, but we did both enjoy it really overall, didn't we? So
yeah, definitely. All right. Finally, the entire month of March, we did a monster movie theme, and this movie came out a little later than we had hoped, but Godzilla vs. Kong is our second review this week.
She's the only one he'll communicate with.
I knew that they had a bond. She had nowhere to go, so I made a promise to protect her. And I think that in some way, Kong did the same.
It is, of course, based on characters Godzilla and Mechagodzilla from Toho, which is a Japanese production company, and King Kong is from Edgar Wallace and Marion C. Cooper. Screenplay is Eric Pearson and Max Bornstein. The story is Terry Rossio, Michael Dougherty, and Zach Shields. And this film was directed by Adam Wingard. It stars quite a few familiar faces from the franchise, but a bunch of new ones too. So we have Alexander Skarsgård, Millie Bobby Brown, Rebecca Hall, Brian Tyree Henry, Shun Oguri, Isaac Gonzalez, Julian Dennison, Lance Reddick, Kyle Chandler, Demaine Bashir, and Kaylee Hotley. So I have to say, I was very much looking forward to this movie. I'd heard a lot of people talking about mainly talking about just the level of destruction in this movie and how it was so much greater than all of the ones that came before it. But also a lot of people were saying that the human element was very, very lacking in this film, which on the one hand didn't really bother me so much until I watched the movie. And this movie, I don't know what they were trying to do.
Honestly,
with this film.
This movie was just a disaster.
Yeah, it
start
was
to finish.
The CGI was
the CGI
fantastic,
was good.
of course. Like the CGI was great. All of the monster scenes were great. The amount of I guess the amount of emotion and ways that they let both Godzilla and Kong emote was great. Like I felt like they really stepped up their game in terms of bringing a sense of empathy to the monsters. But yeah, no, this is the human element in this film is terrible, and the plot makes no sense. And of course, that's stupid to say, right? It's a monster movie, they're fighting. Okay, I get it. It's a monster movie. Like nobody's looking at this movie for a plot. But at least some of the other movies, it kind of made sense. It was like Earth is being threatened by these monsters, so another monster kind of comes in and sets the balance right. Like far-fetched, sure, but it makes sense.
I was going to say in the first Godzilla we had, sort of some lower level monsters, and Godzilla stepped up. But also, if you compare this to the first Godzilla, we both said it was quite boring. However, there was a big human element. There was but there was a good steady build up to Godzilla. There was actually a plot. There was a story.
Yeah.
Then the second movie, the King Kong movie,
Skull
Island, yeah. That was brilliant. That was phenomenal.
That's still the best one in the franchise.
Yeah, and it was funny, action packed. It had a story, had a plot. Right. It was well thought out from start to finish. You could buy into what the characters are doing. Then the second film, Godzilla versus the Monsters.
King of the Monsters.
King of the Monsters. King of the Monsters. Again, there was a plot. It was clear, obvious. And you could get involved why the humans were trying to help Godzilla because he's you need a Titan, but he's a good Titan rather than the Monster Zero, who's a bad Titan, and they wanted to support Godzilla. It was again a well structured.
You could follow it. It made sense.
Yeah.
If you suspended your belief of reality and just looked at it in terms of this specific monsterverse, all of the previous movies made sense. All of the previous movies fit into the monsterverse, and this movie, Godzilla versus Kong, is so far out in left field, and it's just like, where did you get this from?
Real sci-fi movie. This where every other movie was kind of
set in some kind of reality.
Yeah, I know. Again, like you just said, oh, it's a monster movie, you know, but it was a monster movie that was trying to be realistic, especially that first one. That first one was so grounded in reality.
Yeah.
And it was, I know monsters aren't going to rise out of the sea. Well,
Yes.
I bloody hope not anyway. Like, so, like,
but still, like, even if you look at films like Pacific Rim, okay, Pacific Rim is incredibly far-fetched. Yes, I understand that. But it's still sort of made sense in the world of that they kind of set forth for the audience. There was a threat of monsters. Humanity decided that they were going to counter the monster threat by building bigger monsters. So that made sense. And in this one, it's just like this movie had elements that they pulled from Pacific Rim when sort of the Serizawa was, quote, to me, like drifting, almost like they did in Pacific Rim. He's sitting inside of one of Ghidorah's skulls and controlling Mechagodzilla. It's this movie's a mess, and it's upsetting because like I expected more. And not to say that this movie should be Oscar. No, every movie is not Oscar worthy. I get that, and that's perfectly fine. But given the 3 movies that came before this, I expected better. There's way too much camp in this movie. It's so campy and so cheesy, and I don't even understand what the point of bringing Millie Bobby Brown and Jermaine Bashir and Brian Tyree Henry. What purpose did that trio serve? Because all they did was get caught up in the villain's lab and like have comedic relief lines. That's it.
Oh yeah, and to be honest, if they hadn't thrown that cup of water or whatever it was into the computer, they kind of saved the day. So their whole setup was that they ended up throwing some, I think it was water or something or other.
It was whiskey.
Yeah, sorry, I thought it was alcohol, but I couldn't remember what it was.
Yeah.
But they threw it into some machine, and that basically then somehow short-circuited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Come on. No, it wouldn't.
It gave Godzilla and King Kong like a split second to try and beat Mechagodzilla. It was like, but if they hadn't have done that, if that whole setup for Millie Bobby Brown, the other 2 guys, been there. Yeah. But anyway, like, so to jump back a bit, King Kong somehow on Skull Island is trapped in some, I don't know, virtual prison, which
they explained that away by saying that the storm that had originally surrounded the island shifted, and when the storm shifted, it wiped out the people, and Gia was the only survivor. So they built the habitat over what was left of Skull Island and kept Kong inside of it.
No, I know, but I mean,
it's weird though. It's very weird.
It was a weird, disorientating thing to jump straight into, considering the Kong movie. Sorry, Skull Island was a really good movie, and then just to be jumped in, I almost felt like it was like, okay, well, we don't care about now any of that movie. We just need King Kong. Yeah. We don't care about what happened on Skull Island. And then they got this whole thing about how, and this again to me didn't make sense, how they needed to drop Kong through this hole in the floor, in the ocean or wherever it was, the ground or whatever, so that they could go through to, apparently there's this whole other place, called Hollow Earth. And I was just like, what?
But see, again, that is another thing that they lifted right out of Pacific Rim, because that was the reason that the first bomb that they had set off underwater didn't close the rift, is because the rift only responded to kaiju DNA. So basically what they were saying in Godzilla versus Kong was the same thing. Like, you have to have a Titan's DNA to break this seal to get to the Hollow Earth. That's why people couldn't do it. So they had to have Kong so that they could literally just like follow him through the seal.
Yeah, no, I got that.
It's bit, weird though.
I got that bit, but I thought this Hollow Earth thing, it basically, what it was is they were trying to find a way to put Kong and Godzilla up against each other. So I felt the setup for Kong and Godzilla fighting each other was very weak. Yeah. So King Kong ends up in this Hollow Earth thing, and it is where his origin of his descendants are from, and then somehow the people that have taken him there, they kind of do some drilling in the ground, and then it kind of upsets Godzilla, and then he ends up firing his breath into the ground, and then King Kong ends up going through this hole, and then Godzilla and King Kong end up having a massive fight. Now that fight was amazing. Like, and I thought if I
Our apologies to Hong Kong. What a lovely
Oh.
city. I enjoyed my time there. I'm sorry you got destroyed.
Oh, yeah. But do you know what? I thought to myself, it's a shame I wasn't in the big screen for this because I thought the fight scene, that last 20 minutes of fight scene was amazing.
Yeah.
But I thought we've got this 2-hour movie where you've done what you did in the first movie. You've spent the whole movie setting it up for, yes, an amazing fight scene, but you called it Godzilla versus King Kong. Like, not Godzilla versus King Kong for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And
they kind of fight at the beginning too, when they're trying to get Kong out of Skull Island and over
to very brief.
But so that whole sequence at the beginning made sense, and that's what Rebecca Hall's character, Dr. Andrews, had been saying the whole time. She was like, look, the way that we understand Titans and Godzilla specifically is he responds to Titan threats. And as long as Kong is here on Skull Island, completely isolated from everyone else, Godzilla doesn't see him as a threat. And she said, as soon as we take Kong away from Skull Island, Godzilla is going to come for us because Godzilla is going to sense that there is a threat, even if Kong is not intentionally being threatening. So I thought that battle on the water was pretty exciting too, because also, like, the military didn't get as involved in this one as it had been in the previous films, which I thought, I don't know, maybe they learned their lesson and to just kind of let the Titans fight.
I did love the water fight, by the way, like with Kong, Godzilla, and it does make me think, though, to be honest, though, Godzilla does kick King Kong's ass pretty much every time.
Yeah.
So,
by the way, if we're keeping score, I was right because I was always Team Godzilla.
Yeah, I think Godzilla came across a bit smaller, although he's more intelligent, I think, because he can pick up weapons and maybe it's that humanoid part of him.
You mean Kong?
Kong, yeah, Kong. And also the fact that he can communicate with the deaf girl and he was able to do sign language, also understand sign language as well. I thought that was pretty cool too.
Yeah.
I thought it was good to add that element of King Kong to him.
Yeah.
So I also just want to say it's pretty cool that Kyle Chandler has now been in 2 King Kong movies. So, been in the original Peter Davison movie, what was it, 2005 or something? Did you see that film?
Yes, with Jack Black and Naomi Watts.
Yeah. I love that movie, actually. I thought it was really cool.
It was bad.
Yeah. It was better than this movie.
Yeah, definitely. Although I do think it's really cool that the actress who plays Gia, Kaylee Hotley, she actually is deaf. She comes from a deaf family. So that was a nice touch to get an actual deaf actress to play a deaf character.
I don't know how you would repair this movie, but for me, I would have got rid of the Mecha Godzilla. That was stupid.
I think you can keep Mecha. Because I think the only way you have to have some greater evil, because there has to be a moment where it's like the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
No, I get that, and I liked that moment. But what I was thinking would have been better. Now, again, I didn't really like the Hollow Earth thing, but if you kept the Hollow Earth thing, would it not have been cool for King Kong to have gone down there and then he finds something far worse? Like, so maybe have the whole Godzilla versus King Kong thing right at the very beginning. Like, maybe you could have had that the humans took him to Hollow Earth. So a better storyline would have been to take King Kong to Hollow Earth to save him. Like, they're like, look, we need to get Godzilla somewhere else because whilst there's 2 Titans, which Godzilla and King Kong are, they're both going to keep fighting each other and destroying property and all the rest of it. So, well, we've also got, they could say, well, we've got this other place that we could go. We've been struggling to get there. Maybe even do that whole kaiju DNA thing. We can go down there. We can take him down there. We'll go with him. They want to do a bit of exploring, and then almost a bit like an alien presence. Maybe they're down there, and then whilst they're down there, suddenly they discover something far worse than Monster Zero.
If there's another movie, I think that would be the plot of this next movie. Since they have finally introduced Hollow Earth, and there were a couple of like monsters that they fought down in Hollow Earth. But yeah, I think that would definitely be something going forward.
And that's kind of what I thought was like, if they had then King Kong and Godzilla could have teamed up against something bigger than Monster Zero from there. But just the Mecha Godzilla and the whole like you say, the whole drifting thing and all
Yeah.
that nonsense. I was like, how have we gone from this really grounded
Yes.
movie with Bryan Cranston in the first movie that was trying to be actually a serious horror
Yeah.
monster movie to this piece of crap that's come
Yeah.
out now? Like, sorry, I'm really using
Well,
technical
but the
words
problem
here.
is
So
you need a good villain, period. You need a good villain to make these kinds of movies work. And you in the first Godzilla film, the 2014 film, you had the Muto, which
yeah.
was sort of destructive and just indiscriminate in what it was doing, but it was also kind of more powerful than Godzilla up until the very end. So the Muto was a good villain in the first film. In Skull Island, Samuel L. Jackson was a fantastic villain. Plus, you had the Skull Crawlers, which also made good monster villains. In the third one, you had Ghidorah, who was a great villain. And you also had Charles Dance and Vera Farmiga as good human villains. In this film, you don't have a good villain. And that is the problem. There's nothing to really anchor anything because a good villain is the glue that holds these kinds of films together.
I was going to say Charles Dance. He's the one who, as you see at the end, isn't it, in the last film with the
head,
Monster Zero's head, yeah.
Yes.
And I was disappointed he wasn't in this film. So
Yeah.
I was like, well, why was he not in this film? Because he's the one who probably would have initiated this whole.
I'm
mecha
sure
thing.
his people read the script and they were like, "Hell no, we're not passing this on to our client. We pass, thanks."
So because I was like, well, surely he would be the guy in charge of the Mecha Godzilla.
Yeah. So the
That's how
whole
it
like
turns out.
creation of Apex Cybernetics, it was just a bit much. And that entire Apex Cybernetics plot with Brian Tyree Henry and the guy who plays the head of Apex, it was so campy and it was so bad that it reminded me of Transformers, which I love Transformers. Don't get me wrong. I do. I love the first Transformers movie, but Transformers to me has always been teetering on the edge of kind of cheesy because literally they're cars that turn into robots. Like, how could you ever take that seriously? But the amount of camp in this film was so misplaced. It was just completely out of place for the entire series. This film doesn't fit with the rest of the series.
I didn't go into this, like we said at the very start, expecting an Oscar movie, but I did expect it, considering the last three.
Mm-hmm.
Even though we did feel the first one was a bit boring, I still thought it was a good movie. Like it had a good cast, it had a good plot and structure to it. I did expect this to have the same type of feel, but this didn't feel like it was connected really.
No,
other than,
not at all.
Other than 2 or 3 characters from the last film coming over, it didn't feel. It felt like a different franchise almost.
Yeah, this felt like something complete. There's no tension. There was no buildup. There was nothing to actually draw you in as a viewer. The only reason people watch this film all the way to the end is because they really were hedging their bets on who was going to win in a hand-to-hand fight between Godzilla and Kong.
It's definitely Godzilla.
Yes.
Yeah. So
it's wild. Like it was disappointing because, like you said, you get used to the franchise, and the first film, too many humans, not enough monsters. The second film was just right.
It's well balanced.
The second film was good. You had the monster empathy, and then the humans actually turned it out to be the monsters. The third film, it's a little monster heavy, but it's still good because there's an emotional balance between the humans and the monsters in the third movie. And in this film, it's just, I don't know what the hell they were doing in this film.
No, not at all. I think if I own this as a DVD, it would become a coaster.
I would not buy this on DVD at all. I don't even think that I would rewatch this. Whereas whenever I catch Skull Island, I watch it. Like if I'm flipping through the channels and Skull Island is on one of the channels, I will stop on Skull Island and watch it every single time.
Yeah, Skull Island's probably, out of these 4 movies, I'd say Skull Island's my favorite.
Mm-hmm. Mine too.
So
it just bums me out. Like I wanted more for this MonsterVerse, and it doesn't even have an after credit scene. Like it's the only film that doesn't have an after credit scene, which kind of makes me, I don't know. It makes me sad because I really kind of wanted it to continue, and I would have loved to see what this movie does if it can tie into the Pacific Rim universe. And I can definitely see where they were going. Like I said, there's drifting, there's all kinds of things that they elements of Pacific Rim that I could see in this film. And I think that was probably their problem. They couldn't decide what they wanted to be. So the campiness worked in Pacific Rim, probably because Guillermo del Toro is a much better sort of director writer. So he probably kept everything together a little bit better. But also, like, that's a genre that he's familiar with, and that's a genre that he's good at dealing with. And this film, it just, you're not Guillermo del Toro. Like, this is you can't do what he does.
Maybe they should have brought him in.
Oh man! Now, if they do another film in this franchise and it has him trying to, I would watch it, camp and all.
Yeah, I mean, I do you know what? For me, rewatching this movie, the only thing that would make me be interested in watching this movie would be to just watch the fight at the very end, Godzilla versus Kong. I probably wasn't too bothered about the rest of it. But do you know what, actually, I would say is when they went to Hollow Earth, and again, the Hollow Earth thing was just, I just don't get why they put it in. But however, when they did go to Hollow Earth, and I thought that was pretty cool, like the whole imagery of seeing in the sky land, because it's obviously Hollow Earth is meant to be underneath,
right?
Wherever you are in the world, there is apparently another realm of Earth underneath, and because it's all around the world, and there's some sort of gravity thing that's in flux or something like that. So you could be standing in the sky, or you could be standing on the floor, and I thought that was pretty cool. But when they found the chamber that King Kong's ancestors had come from,
and he got the axe.
And he got the axe. But when the ships all landed and everything, I was like, I love stuff like this. I love it. It did make me think of Aliens a little bit, landing in this sort of real alternate world and this whole mysterious world. And I thought this would be something. And if they do make a fifth movie, exploring Hollow Earth would be pretty cool. And that's a little. So when the movie ends, they have set up a camp at Hollow Earth, and King Kong has been relocated to Hollow Earth. So it could be that the next film's set on Hollow Earth. Maybe they've got a human civilization. Maybe we won't have Millie Bobby Brown carrying on, but it could be Alexander Skarsgård and sort of some of those characters are there. Somehow Godzilla's going to have to get down there and back King Kong up. But that might be quite a good fifth movie.Maybe King Kong is the sort of champion, and maybe Godzilla just kind of rocks up at the end, and it's mainly a King Kong movie, because we've only had one King Kong movie standalone. So,
or it could be like what Godzilla did, where he kind of shot his nuclear breath or whatever into the ground. So he's keeping an eye on whatever the threat is at Hollow Earth, making sure that it doesn't make it to the surface, while King Kong is fighting this thing in the Hollow Earth. That could, if there is another movie, I will watch it 100%.
I would.
But as far as this movie as a standalone, I did not enjoy it at all. It was too disjointed. It was just a mess. And it had a super, super weak villain, which is I always say this, no matter what I'm watching, whether it's TV or reading books, it doesn't matter what the medium is. But if you don't have a good villain, you don't have a good story.
So let's bring that to a close and hopefully never talk about it again. We rated it. We kind of rated it probably higher than it deserves. 2 out of 5. So anyway, this week's recommendations are brought to you by Image Comics.
Yes.
So the first
unintentionally, by the way, I didn't know Mark was recommending an Image comic too.
Geiger issue 1 by Jeff Johns and Gary Frank from Image Comics came out this week. It's set 20 years after a nuclear war, although you kind of flash back a little bit and see some of its origins. It follows the survivors of the nuclear war who live in different places. So we've got the Las Vegas Strip, and the hotels have kind of been changed into kingdoms, and we've got a Joffrey-esque character sitting on one of the thrones. And then we also have our main character, Tariq Geiger, who becomes a pretty much radioactive man, and him and his family get separated in the flashback, and they get into the bunker, all of his family, his wife and kids and stuff like that. However, he gets left behind with his dog when the nuclear bomb goes off, and he's become this sort of radioactive man superhero that kind of sort of lives in the wastelands in Vegas. However, when I say he's a hero, the only hero bit he is kind of looking after his family who are in this bunker, and he sort of says in the comic that, he'll, they'll be reunited one day when they're safe to do so. So in the wastelands and everywhere, it's radioactive. So in the hotels, I'm assuming they've done something to make it radioactive proof, because there's a scene on the last page where there's sort of glass tunnels between each hotel that you can, I guess, walk between. I'm assuming radioactive safe. However, no, I really enjoyed the comic. I thought it was well written by Jeff, and I love Gary Frank's art ever since. But I think the first thing I ever read with him was Ken or Gen 13 or something like that. But no, this is a really good comic. I really recommend it. So I'll stop talking about that now. But yes, I think it's worth picking up.
My recommendation this week is another Image comic. It is called Two Moons. The first issue came out at the end of February. Two Moons is written by John Arcudi, and it is illustrated by Valerio Giangiordano. So this book sort of takes place in the middle of the Civil War, where the main character is a Native American. He's of the Pawnee tribe. His name is Virgil Morris, but in his native tongue, his name is Two Moons. It's interesting because it's kind of like a horror comic where he has this crazy mystical ability to see the evil within, or to see things that are on the other side, whether that's ghosts or demons or monsters or whatever you want to call them. So he is fighting for the Union against the Confederacy, and there's a scene where he's at a military hospital and he sees his grandfather, and he talks to him and everything, and they have a conversation, and then the next thing he knows, it's like he blinks and then he's looking at his grandfather's dead body, and a nurse comes up and is kind of like, "Oh, did you know this man? Because we found him a few days ago and we could just kind of sat with him. There was nothing we could do, and he died." And so Two Moons is kind of like, I just talked to him. What do you mean he died? So it's interesting. And then there's another scene where he's fighting on the battlefield, and he sees one of his fellow Union soldiers turn into this crazy looking monster that is just like hell bent on murdering anything that gets in its path. So it seems really interesting so far. The artwork is incredibly graphic. Of course, it's a Civil War, so there's lots of death and dead bodies. But the art it's blood and dismembered people and gunshot wounds. It's just it's crazy. But it's kind of interesting, and I want to keep reading, except I don't like to read scary things at night. So I will not be reading the next issue until probably tomorrow morning.
So the third issue comes out on the 28th of April. So yeah, just two issues so far, but
right.
Third issue soon. And I do know. I love the front cover of the first issue.
Yeah.
So it is something that I'd seen and had an interest in. But
yeah, it's something that I wanted to pick up because I picked up a bunch of other books like at the actual comic shop that week that the first one came out, February 24th. But my comic shop had already run out by the time I got there. So finally got my hands on it and read it. So yeah, Two Moons, that's my recommendation for this week.
So next week, we're going to be reviewing the whole season of Pacific Rim, The Black, which is an anime TV series on Netflix. We're also going to be reviewing the first 2 episodes of Kung Fu on the CW.
And as a reminder, we did start a second podcast series where we tackle some of the most essential graphic novels of all time. Our 5th Late to the Party Book Club episode was March, Volume 1 by Andrew Iden and the late Congressman John Lewis. That episode dropped in February. Our next book club episode is coming out in April, at the very end of April. And it's going to be Akira Volume 1 by Kazuhiro Otomo.
You can follow us on social media as well. You can subscribe to the podcast, obviously, everywhere, but you can also follow us on social media on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.
And you can get this podcast wherever you get your podcast. Podbean, Google, Apple, Spotify, TuneIn. We are everywhere. So be sure to give us a 5-star review and tell your geeky friends.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks for listening, and stay geeky.
Bye.